Shabbat Shalom. This past spring, we welcomed a new little person into the Jewish people. Her name is Skylar Giselle Eichner, and I had the honor of helping her parents, Saul and Becky, bring her into the covenant. Saul is a concert pianist. While Becky was pregnant, every night he played melodies on his grand piano, especially Disney songs. During the naming ceremony, he reprised these same tunes. The music floated over little Skylar's head, and I found myself wondering, what does she hear? And more importantly, what is she listening to? We know that hearing is one of the first senses to develop. Babies in utero begin to recognize speech patterns, their mother's voice, and familiar music. To hear is human. It's something we do naturally without trying. In fact, we can't help but hear. But listening is something else entirely. Listening requires attention and intention. To hear is human. To listen is to love. This week's Torah portion, Parashat Hanan, contains our most central declaration of Jewish faith. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. This verse is often translated as, "Hear, O Israel." But the Hebrew word Shema means more than just hear. For the rabbis, Shema meant listen, pay attention, internalize, and respond. Hearing is passive, listening is active. Hearing is one of our first human experiences, but listening, real listening, is an act of love. The Mishnah teaches, Hayakore b'Torah v'higia zman hamikra im kiven libo. If a person is reading from the Torah and it happens to be the time to recite the Shema, they fulfill their obligation if they direct their heart, kiven libo. In other words, it's not just the words that matter. It's the intention behind the words that we are saying. The word Shema appears throughout this week's Parsha, not just in Deuteronomy 6:4, but again and again we read, and now listen, O Israel, to the statutes and the ordinances, and Shema Yisrael, Ata Over Hayom et Hayarden. Hear, Israel, listen, Israel, you're about to cross the Jordan today. Why this Deuteronomic obsession with listening or hearing? Because in many ways, the Torah privileges hearing over seeing. And this is an important point for one of our central concepts in the book of Deuteronomy, that of monotheism. Ancient cultures worshipped what they could see, the sun, the Nile, idols made of stone. Judaism's great innovation was to say, what is invisible is more real than what we can see. The eternal, the sacred, is not something that we can see. The Torah is suspicious of sight sometimes. Revelation happens, after all, not through vision, but through sound. Adam and Eve first experienced God as a call, a voice in the garden. Creation begins not with a picture, but with words. Vayomer Elokim, Yihi Or, and God said, let there be light. And in this week's Parsha, we read, God spoke to you. From the midst of the fire, you heard the sound of words, but you saw no form, nothing but a voice. Zulati kol. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, of blessed memory, said, God is found in words. And what does it mean to really listen to these words? Hearing is linear. We can only hear one thing at a time. But sight is multidimensional. We can take in an entire scene at once. Still, we seem to want to keep trusting our eyes. We say seeing is believing, but seeing, we know, is not always reliable. In the famous invisible gorilla experiment, people were asked to count basketball passes in a video. In the middle, someone in a gorilla suit came out into the middle of the court. Half of the viewers did not even notice because they were busy counting the passes. This is called inattentional blindness. But hearing has its limitations too. Just because we hear something doesn't mean that we are listening. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt once murmured to every guest in a receiving line, "I murdered my grandmother this morning." And he noted that as people shook his hand, they responded with, "Wonderful, keep up the good work." And there was only one person, the ambassador from Bolivia, who responded by saying, "I'm sure she had it coming." So how do we begin to really listen? We start by getting quiet. The Mishnah teaches us that the pious ones of the early times would wait for an hour before praying in order to direct their hearts to God. And it's this idea from the Mishnah that many of those who practice meditation in the Jewish faith ground some of their experience in. Because what were the rabbis doing? They were meditating. They were taking some time to quiet their minds and really, really listen. And I want to take a moment just for 1 minute right now for us to actually experiment with that as a preparation for ourselves as we begin to try to really listen and direct our hearts as we continue on our path towards the Yamim Noraim, the high holidays. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable and to just listen. To notice how even in the quiet, there's not silence. In our Eitz Chaim Torah commentary on our verse, the Shema, there's a quote from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel who says that Jewish prayer is an act of listening. We do not bring forth our own words, he says. The self is silent, and the spirit of the people Israel speaks. In prayer, we listen to what the words convey. And when we listen, what do we hear those words convey? Of course, the next line that follows, ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, and you shall love. To listen is to love. Listening, true, deep, compassionate listening, is one of the greatest acts of chesed, of loving kindness. When we listen to another person, we affirm that they matter. So as we begin or continue our journey towards the high holidays, let us carry Rabbi Heschel's words with us. Jewish prayer is an act of listening, and listening is an act of love. Shabbat Shalom.